Hi, Sally Walker here, your hormone and slow age expert, and welcome to my Happy Health blog. So we're talking about hormones this week, so I thought we better talk a little bit about how hormone production is regulated and who actually at the end of the day is in control. Okay, so primarily they are controlled by something called a negative feedback. And for you to understand this, I'm going to give you examples of different hormone production, so you it's easier to understand, and it's quite important because at the end of the day you'll understand who it is that is responsible for the hormone production. Okay, so there are three types of stimulus that can control hormonal release. Okay, so it's all based on that a certain need for a certain hormone will start the process. Okay, so let's have a little look at blood sugar as being the stimulus. Okay, so we call this a humoral stimulus. Okay, so what happens here? So the brain stem or the hypothalamus will register how much glucose you have in your blood. And if it is registered being high, you possibly just eaten some food, for example, then the hypothalamus, now this very, very important area in the brain, which I call the commander-in-chief, the hypothalamus and the brainstem as well, but primarily the hypothalamus, will communicate with your pancreas via the nervous system and say, excuse me, but our blood sugar is very high, so you need to produce some insulin so we can decrease it. And the pancreas just gets on and does its job, and it will produce some insulin. Okay, so then what happens is that the blood glucose levels begin to decrease because they get into the cells. So then the blood is monitored still all the time in the hypothalamus and the brainstem. So now we register that the blood glucose levels is dropping. So we don't need to keep continually sending messages to the pancreas to make more insulin. A negative feedback. That's what it's all about. So I could also give you an example with the thyroid. So that works a little bit differently, and this is called a hormonal stimulus. Okay, so here what happens is that the level of the thyroid hormones T4 and T3 are continually measured and monitored in the blood in the hypothalamus. And if those levels drop, which could indicate that the thyroid isn't working hard enough, you're possibly getting a little bit tired now, you might be getting those symptoms, you might be cold, you might be freezing, this kind of thing, you might begin to be a little bit depressed. These are some of the symptoms of having too little of the thyroid hormone. So it's kept very much under control. So what happens here is that if the levels are measured in the hypothalamus as being low, the hypothalamus will then send a message to the pituitary, and it will do this through a special little tract, a little duct, which goes from the hypothalamus to the pituitary. It's sort of hanging underneath it. And then the pituitary will produce hormones which are released into the blood, which go to the thyroid and tell the thyroid to make more T4 and T3. Okay, so more T4 and T3 is made, the blood levels of these hormones increases. This is registered in the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus said, thank you very much. And then it stops sending messages to the pituitary, and the pituitary stops sending messages to your thyroid. So you don't increase the production anymore. And this is regulated up and down all day long. Okay, that's called a hormonal stimulus. And then we have the last one, which is called a neural stimulus. And this is related to the stress hormones, noradrenaline and adrenaline. Okay, so here what happens is the brain, the hypothalamus, registers a danger. And this could be internal, could be external, but it's a danger of some description. It could be you're thinking about something which is frightening you. It could be that. Okay, so what happens is that this is registered, and immediately the hypothalamus sends signals to the adrenal glands, to the adrenal medulla, not the cortex, to the medulla, telling it through the sympathetic nervous system, telling it to produce noradrenaline and adrenaline. Yeah, so they're the stress hormones, if you like. Anyway, so this is what happens. And then what happens is that your blood glucose is going to increase. So that's going to be one of the things. And so you can make more energy so you can run away from your danger if it's not in your head, obviously. So if you run away from your danger and your hypothalamus says, oh, we don't have any more danger now, then the signals from the hypothalamus to the adrenal glands will stop or will be less. And then you will produce less of the noradrenaline and adrenaline. But if this danger doesn't disappear because it is in your head and you're thinking all the time about something which is worrying you, frightening you, then the hypothalamus will send out a hormonal message via the pituitary, which will then send a message to the adrenal cortex telling it to produce the stress hormone cortisol. Yeah? Again, if the stress or the danger disappears or becomes less, then the message to the pituitary and then the message to the adrenal glands or the adrenal cortex will be less, and then everything calms down. Okay, so that's what it's called, a feedback, and that's an example of how it happens. Okay, now everything, your blood sugar, your stress, the danger, all of these things, there's one person which is controlling every message, everything that is going to your hypothalamus is all under your control. So at the end of the day, you are controlling which hormones are being produced and how much of them are being produced through the actions, through the thoughts, through the emotions of everything you do every single day. So remember, every hormone has a specific message. Insulin will remove the glucose from the blood, put it into the cells. It's also a big fat storing hormone. So your thyroid hormones are going to increase the energy production in your cells. Your noradrenaline and adrenaline are going to increase your blood pressure, your pulse rate, your breathing rate, going to make you sweat, etc. But they're going to help you cope with the danger. Cortisol is going to do other things as well, but both of them are really going to lift your blood sugar so you can fix whatever you need to fix. They all have a specific message and you can't change the message. But it is within your control to stop them being produced or control how much is being produced. So, for example, with the blood sugar, that's an easy one. If you do eat lots of sugary foods that contain a lot of glucose, if you stop doing that, then your blood sugar will not go high. You will not need to have a big production of insulin. So that means that you're not going to be storing quite so much fat. So it is all under your control. I'm not saying it's necessarily easy, but I am telling you it is all under your control to control which messages your hypothalamus receives, because your hypothalamus will just react on the messages it receives. If it's danger, it's going to produce the stress hormones. If the blood sugar is high, it's going to produce the insulin. If your T4 and T3 are low because you're nutrient deficient, you don't have enough iodine, you don't have enough selene, whatever. If these hormones are low, you're going to produce more of them through the hormonal control from your hypothalamus and your pituitary. It's all under your control. So good luck with that. Happy hormones, happy life.